Most people think that if someone feels threatened by you, it means you did something aggressive, something arrogant, or something intentionally competitive. But that's rarely how it works. In reality, people often feel threatened by you for reasons you may not even notice. Sometimes it's because you stay calm when others react emotionally. Sometimes it's because you don't chase attention the way everyone else does. Sometimes it's simply because you are comfortable being yourself, and strangely, those quiet qualities can make certain people deeply uncomfortable. They may smile at you, talk to you normally, even act friendly on the surface, but underneath, something in your presence makes them feel unsettled. And when that happens, their behavior begins to change in subtle ways. Small signals, strange reactions, moments that feel slightly off. If you learn to recognize these signals, you start to understand something important about human nature. Because the people who feel threatened by you almost never admit it directly. Instead, they reveal it through patterns. In this video, we'll explore 7 quiet signs that someone secretly feels threatened by you. And more importantly, how a Stoic mindset helps you deal with it without anger, without ego, and without losing your peace. Human beings are deeply sensitive to comparison, not just obvious comparisons like wealth, status, or appearance, but quieter comparisons. Confidence, independence, clarity, self-control. When someone around you possesses a quality that another person secretly wishes they had, a strange psychological tension can appear. Sometimes it inspires admiration, but other times it triggers insecurity. And insecurity has a way of turning admiration into quiet hostility. The Stoic philosophers understood this long ago. They recognized that many negative reactions from others have less to do with what you did, and more to do with how your presence reflects something inside them. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that when people behave strangely toward you, it is usually because they are struggling with their own thoughts and fears. Understanding this changes how you see people. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin observing patterns. And once you start paying attention, certain behaviors become surprisingly clear. Let's begin with the first sign. They subtly downplay your achievements. First sign often appears in the way someone reacts. When something good happens in your life, at first, the moment may seem completely normal. You share a success, a new opportunity, a goal you've finally achieved. Maybe it's something small. Maybe it's something deeply meaningful to you. Most people will respond the way you expect. They congratulate you. They smile. They celebrate the moment with you. But occasionally, there is one person whose reaction feels slightly different. They smile, but the enthusiasm isn't really there. They acknowledge your success, but quickly reduce its importance. They might say something like, "Well, you were lucky. Anyone could have done that. It's not that big of a deal." The words themselves may sound harmless, but the feeling behind them tells a different story. Instead of celebrating your progress, they quietly shrink it. Instead of recognizing your effort, they redirect attention away from it. Why does this happen? Because success creates comparison, and comparison can trigger insecurity. When someone feels uncertain about their own progress, seeing another person move forward can challenge their sense of self-worth. Your growth becomes a mirror, not a mirror of arrogance, but a mirror of possibility, and sometimes instead of asking themselves how they might grow as well. It feels easier to minimize the person standing in front of them. Most of the time, this reaction is not conscious cruelty. It is simply a defense mechanism. If your success can be explained away as luck, then they don't have to confront the uncomfortable thought that your discipline, your mindset, or your effort played a role. The Stoic philosophers understood this very well. They knew that people often protect their ego before they protect the truth. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be disturbed when others dismiss or misunderstand him, because another person's reaction usually reveals more about their inner struggles than it does about you. So when someone quietly downplays your achievements, the Stoic response is not anger, it is awareness. You notice the pattern. You understand what insecurity looks like when it tries to protect itself, and instead of arguing, defending, or trying to convince them, you simply keep moving forward. Because real confidence does not require validation from people who feel threatened by your growth. And interestingly, this behavior often leads to the second sign. They compete with you even when there is no competition. Second sign becomes visible in the way someone begins to compete with you even when no competition exists. At first, this behavior may appear subtle. You mention a new idea, a small achievement, a step you're planning to take, and almost immediately, they respond with something bigger. You talk about a goal you reached, and they quickly explain how they did something similar, but better. You share an experience, and they shift the conversation to a story that places them one step ahead. The strange part is you were never trying to compete. You were simply sharing a moment. But for someone who feels threatened by you, comparison becomes automatic. Every conversation quietly turns into a scoreboard. Every success becomes something they feel the need to match. Every step forward you take feels like pressure for them to prove something about themselves. Over time, this creates a strange dynamic. Instead of connection, there is silent rivalry. Instead of curiosity, there is constant comparison. And the person doing this may not even realize it. Because when insecurity is involved, competition often becomes unconscious. The Stoics observed this tendency long ago. They understood that many people measure their worth not by their own progress, but by how they stand relative to others. If someone else moves forward, they feel as if they have moved backward. But a Stoic mindset rejects this illusion. Life is not a race against everyone around you. Each person walks a different path, at a different pace, with different challenges. True confidence does not need to prove superiority. It simply focuses on growth. So when someone constantly tries to compete with you without any real reason, it often reveals something deeper, not strength, but insecurity trying to protect itself. And once you begin noticing this pattern, another sign often becomes easier to recognize. A reaction that appears when comparison turns into criticism. When comparison begins to grow inside someone's mind, it often leads to the third sign. They start becoming unusually critical of you. At first, the criticism may seem small, a comment about something you said, a remark about how you handled a situation, a subtle suggestion that you could have done something better. None of these things appear serious on their own, but over time, a pattern starts to form. The same person who once seemed neutral or supportive suddenly begins pointing out your flaws more often. They question your decisions. They highlight your mistakes. They analyze your actions with surprising intensity. Sometimes the criticism is disguised as advice. Sometimes it appears as humor. And sometimes it comes wrapped in phrases like, "I'm just being honest. I'm only trying to help." But the frequency of the criticism begins to feel unusual. Why does this happen? Because criticism can become a psychological defense. If someone feels threatened by your growth, one way to reduce that feeling is to focus on your imperfections. By highlighting what you did wrong, they quietly restore balance in their mind. Your success becomes less impressive if your mistakes are constantly magnified. Your confidence becomes easier to tolerate if your flaws are repeatedly emphasized. The Stoics were very familiar with this behavior. They understood that people often criticize not because they clearly see the truth, but because criticism allows them to protect their own sense of importance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that when someone attacks your character, you should first ask a simple question: is what they say true? If the answer is yes, then improve yourself. If the answer is no, then their criticism loses its power, because the opinion of another person cannot define who you are. This mindset creates a kind of inner stability. Instead of reacting emotionally, you observe the pattern. You understand that excessive criticism often reveals more about insecurity than about your actual flaws. And interestingly, this behavior often becomes most visible in a very specific moment. The moment when others begin praising you. They become uncomfortable when others praise you when that moment arrives. Their reaction often becomes very noticeable. Someone compliments you. They acknowledge your effort, your progress, or the work you have done. In most situations, this is a simple, positive exchange. But if someone secretly feels threatened by you, this moment can create visible discomfort. Instead of joining the praise, they suddenly become quiet. Instead of showing support, they change the subject. Sometimes they laugh it off. Sometimes they add a small comment that shifts attention away from you. The room may not even notice it, but if you pay attention, you can feel the subtle shift. The atmosphere becomes slightly tense. Why does praise create this reaction? Because recognition intensifies comparison. When others acknowledge your strengths, it reinforces the very qualities that may already be making them feel insecure. Your progress becomes public. Your growth becomes visible. And for someone struggling with comparison, that moment can feel uncomfortable. So instead of sharing the celebration, they distance themselves from it. The Stoics believed that external praise should never become the foundation of your self-worth. But they also understood that praise reveals something interesting about the people around you. It shows who celebrates your progress and who quietly withdraws from it. A confident person can admire another person's success without feeling diminished. But someone who feels threatened by you often experiences the opposite. Your recognition becomes a reminder of their own internal struggle, and sometimes that tension becomes even more visible in the moments when things do not go perfectly for you. Moments when mistakes appear, moments when things go wrong. Because that is when the fifth sign often reveals itself. They seem strangely satisfied when you struggle when things go wrong for you. Their reaction can reveal more than words ever could. Everyone faces moments of difficulty, plans fail, mistakes happen. Life becomes complicated in healthy relationships. These moments often bring support. People offer encouragement. They try to help. They remind you that setbacks are temporary. But when someone secretly feels threatened by you, your struggles can create a very different reaction. On the surface, they may still appear sympathetic. They may say the right words. They may even offer polite concern. Yet something about their energy feels slightly different. Instead of genuine empathy, there is a subtle sense of relief. Your setback quietly reduces the pressure they feel, because when you struggle, the comparison disappears, your progress pauses, your confidence seems less intimidating, and for a moment, their own insecurities feel quieter. This reaction is rarely conscious. Most people would never openly admit that someone else's failure makes them feel better. But psychology shows that comparison strongly shapes human emotion. When someone feels threatened by another person's growth, they may experience relief when that growth slows down. The Stoics were aware of this tendency. They understood that people sometimes feel comfort not when life becomes easier for everyone, but when life becomes harder for those they compare themselves to. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to fall into this same trap. Instead of resenting another person's success or quietly enjoying their struggles, he believed a wise person should focus only on improving their own character. Because the moment you measure your peace against someone else's setbacks, you lose control of your own mind. When you observe someone reacting strangely to your difficulties, it can be an important signal, not necessarily of hatred, but of insecurity. And once you begin noticing this pattern, another behavior often becomes easier to recognize. A behavior that appears when someone begins trying to shape how others see you. They try to control the narrative about you when someone begins feeling threatened by your presence. Another pattern can slowly appear. They start trying to control how other people see you. This behavior is often subtle at first. It may begin with small comments shared in conversations with others. They mention a mistake you made. They highlight a weakness. They frame a situation in a way that slightly changes the story about you. None of these comments seem dramatic on their own, but over time, they begin shaping a narrative. A version of you that emphasizes your flaws while quietly ignoring your strengths. Why does this happen? Because reputation carries power. If people respect you, your influence grows. Your words matter more. Your presence becomes stronger. And for someone who feels threatened by you, that influence can feel uncomfortable. So instead of confronting their insecurity directly, they attempt something else. They adjust the story. If your character can be questioned, your influence becomes weaker. If your motives can be doubted, your confidence appears less threatening. The Stoics recognized this pattern in human behavior. They understood that people sometimes attempt to shape public opinion when they cannot control another person directly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that reputation ultimately belongs to others. People will always create their own interpretations. Trying to control every opinion about you is a battle that cannot be won. The Stoic response is different. Instead of chasing reputation, you focus on character. Because reputation is fragile, but character is stable. Stories can be distorted, but consistent actions eventually reveal the truth. So when someone begins shaping narratives about you, the wisest response is not panic, it is patience. You allow time and integrity to speak louder than rumors. And interestingly, when you remain calm in the middle of these situations, it often reveals the final sign, the sign that unsettles insecure people more than anything else. The final sign often has nothing to do with what you say or what you achieve. It has to do with how you carry yourself when someone secretly feels threatened by you. One of the most unsettling things for them is your calm confidence. You don't argue to prove your worth. You don't chase validation. You don't feel the need to dominate every conversation. Instead, you remain steady. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you react. And strangely, this quiet self-possession can make insecure people uncomfortable, because confidence without noise is difficult to challenge. When someone is loud, others can argue with them. When someone constantly defends themselves, others can attack their explanations. But when someone stands calmly in who they are, there is very little to fight against. This kind of presence doesn't demand attention, yet it quietly commands respect. The Stoic philosophers valued this quality deeply. They believed that true strength is not shown through domination or arrogance. It is shown through self-mastery, through the ability to remain steady even when others try to provoke you. Epictetus once said that no one truly harms you unless they can control your mind. And a person who understands this moves through the world differently. They don't react to every opinion. They don't fight every battle. They don't need to prove themselves to every critic they encounter, because their confidence comes from within, not from applause, not from comparison, not from competition. And this is why calm confidence can feel intimidating to people who are still searching for their own stability. Your peace reminds them of the chaos they still carry. Your clarity reminds them of the confusion they are still navigating. Your independence reminds them of the approval they still need. But here is the Stoic lesson. When someone feels threatened by you, it does not mean you should shrink yourself. It does not mean you should become arrogant. And it certainly does not mean you should start competing with them. Instead, you continue walking your path with quiet discipline. You focus on your character. You focus on your growth. You focus on becoming a better person than you were yesterday. Because the goal of a Stoic life is not to intimidate others. It is to become so grounded in your values that the opinions of insecure people no longer disturb your peace. And once you reach that point, something interesting happens. You stop worrying about who feels threatened by you. You stop analyzing every strange reaction. You stop trying to control how others interpret your presence. Instead, you simply live calmly, clearly, and with a quiet strength that no comparison can shake. And in the end, that is the greatest power a person can possess. If you recognize some of these signs in your life, remember something important. Not everyone who reacts strangely to your growth is your enemy. Sometimes they are simply confronting their own insecurities. Your task is not to control their reactions. Your task is to remain steady, to grow quietly, to act with integrity, to build a life that reflects your values. Because the strongest people are not the ones who defeat everyone around them. They are the ones who master themselves. If this message resonated with you, stay with Stoic Havenway, because sometimes the quietest lessons are the ones that change us the most.